A choice that changed everything. A father facing his own family to protect his daughter's future. I never imagined something like this would happen. I always believed we could overcome anything, that a father's love was enough to face any adversity. But deep down, I knew things between my parents and me would never be as I imagined. Alice, my adopted daughter, was my world. When she came into my life, everything changed. I no longer had the responsibility of just taking care of myself, but of a human being who needed all the support and affection. At first, everything seemed fine, even with the family's judgment. They never accepted Alice, always making it clear that she wasn't blood-related, and that always cut me to the core. But I never let it affect my relationship with her. Until one day, something happened that made me see everything differently. Alice was 6 years old at the time, and like any child, she loved to play. At one of those family gatherings, when I saw that my biological daughters were having fun, and Alice, my daughter, was being treated like a kind of servant, everything changed. I found her in the kitchen, alone, washing dishes, while the other children were playing. They were treating her like a slave, and it simply wasn't going to work anymore. I looked at her face, and what I saw was the purity of a child who was blameless, being humiliated by those who should have loved her. I saw the pain in her eyes, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. I don't even know how to describe what I felt, but it was anger, shame, and an immense fear that this would continue. The worst part was that my parents didn't see what they were doing. They thought they were just educating the girl, as if it wasn't obvious to them what was happening. In that moment, everything became clear to me. The decision was made. I wasn't going to tolerate this anymore. I wasn't going to let my daughter grow up believing she was less valuable than others just because she wasn't the right blood. That afternoon was the beginning of it all. I couldn't contain my anger, and when I saw my mother trying to justify her behavior, I exploded. I ended up saying what I should have said a long time ago, that I was tired of being used. I was tired of being the good son who always sacrificed for the family, yet received nothing in return. I always gave them everything I could, financially, emotionally, and in the end, it was just ingratitude. I could no longer accept Alice being treated as if she were less important than their other granddaughters. That's when I made the hardest decision of my life. The decision I knew would change everything forever. I completely cut off financial support. I no longer wanted to be my family's savior, who instead of supporting me, only made me suffer. From that day on, my parents were on their own, without my support. I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew I couldn't continue giving them what they felt they were entitled to. Of course, the blackmail began. I knew it was coming. They came after me, trying to guilt me into thinking I was destroying the family. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. I looked at Alice, who was as confused as I was, and realized she was scared. I saw her anguish at how things were unfolding. It was hard to see the impact this was having on her, but I knew that to protect my daughter, I needed to cut that part of my life off. I always believed that family should be the foundation of everything, but after that day I realized my family wasn't who I imagined it to be. My family was Alice, and it was for her that I would fight. I could no longer live with this doubt of whether I was doing the right thing or not. I knew I was doing the right thing. I would never again allow anyone, especially my parents, to treat Alice with the disdain she was being treated. She deserved more than this. She deserved love. The following days were difficult. It wasn't easy. My mother, my father, the pressure from my family, it all suffocated me. But on the other hand, when I looked at Alice, I saw a strength in her that I'd never noticed before. Even with everything that had happened, she never stopped smiling. I knew it was my role to protect her from it all, and that gave me the strength to carry on. Even with a heavy heart full of uncertainty, I knew I'd made the right choice. Alice would overcome all of this in time, and I would be there to help her get back on her feet. Time passed, But the weight of the decision didn't lessen. In fact, with each day I saw my parents' reaction, the pain grew. I knew my actions had caused a permanent rift, and it affected me in ways I hadn't expected. They never fully accepted me, but their reaction was the final straw. I felt guilty for not being able to do more for them, for watching their home fall apart without my financial help. But at the same time, I couldn't live the lie anymore. They would never understand. And I was tired of trying. Alice didn't deserve any of this. Over time, I realized that deep down, the anger I felt toward my parents wasn't just for them, but for myself as well. I'd always let things happen without question, always allowing them to treat Alice as if she were less than. Deep down, I was afraid to face this truth, afraid of losing my own story, my own identity as a son. That day made me realize how trapped I was in the past, in what I thought my family should be. I needed to take a step back, look at everything clearly, and above all, understand that my priority was Alice, not my parents. Alice slowly began to understand what was happening, but in a way that, even as a child, surprised me. I expected her to feel rejected, lost, but she reacted with a strength I hadn't seen before. She looked at me with those big eyes and with a shy smile said, "Dad, I know you'll protect me." In that moment, her words were all I needed to hear. I didn't know how she was so sure, but her trust in me was what kept me going every day. There were times when the pain of seeing my family drift apart was almost unbearable. I was ashamed to admit to people what was happening. I felt like they were judging me, but my priority was keeping Alice safe, and that safety came with distance. Every time someone asked me about my parents or suggested I try to resolve the situation, I simply said it was no longer possible. I couldn't give in anymore. I couldn't try to please others at the expense of what was fair for my daughter. When I finally realized that Alice was managing to overcome what she'd experienced, that she was stronger and more confident, everything seemed clearer. The love we'd built over the years was finally making sense. I saw her take the first steps toward overcoming her grandparents' trauma, and that made me believe that perhaps she had more strength than I did. I was there to help, but she was already beginning to rebuild herself. What once seemed impossible now seemed closer. Together, we began to understand that despite what life had thrown at us, we could build something better, a new family, a new story. Of course, there were difficult days. It wasn't all as easy as I'd imagined. Even though we were apart, the pressure from my family continued, and other members began to get involved, trying to make me back down. But I didn't let myself be swayed. What I saw was a vicious cycle of manipulation and selfishness, and I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. There was no more room in my life for empty feelings. I saw clearly that my parents would never be different, and that the only person who could truly give Alice what she needed was me. The pain of the breakup was intense, but over time I learned to cope with it. The fear of making this decision and losing everything I knew began to dissipate. I found myself, little by little, reconnecting with my true essence. I no longer needed to please anyone. I needed to be the best father for Alice. She was everything to me. We had a family that was just the two of us, and that was what mattered. It didn't matter what others thought or said, because her happiness was my greatest mission. Today, when I look back, I see how difficult it was to sever that relationship. I see the scars of pain, but I also see the strength I gained. Not just Alice, but myself as well. I learned that overcoming grief isn't about forgetting what happened, but about moving forward, even with the weight of pain. I still carry everything I went through, but somehow this experience made me stronger. I became a better father, a more whole person, and above all, I understood that true family is made of love and respect, not obligations or guilt. I never imagined Alice and I would be so strong together. Time was our ally, and with each passing day, I saw how much she grew in every way. She became an incredible girl, full of empathy and affection, and my pride in her only grew. Of course, there were still difficult moments when she missed her family, but I was there to show her that what truly mattered was the love we had for each other. Alice and I were a team, and that gave me the strength to carry on. In the quieter moments at night, when we were alone at home, I sometimes found myself thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about the opportunities I'd missed to be with my parents, the pain of having to make such a drastic decision. But when I looked at Alice, I realized that in the end it had all been worth it. What I was doing was for her. I felt more at peace with my choices because deep down I knew that if I had given in, we would both be trapped in that same lie. The decision I made, though difficult and heartbroken for a while, taught me the true meaning of fighting for those we love. I could no longer allow anything to interfere with my daughter's life. Alice had always been my priority, and that would never change. My family's manipulations, the emotional blackmail, none of that mattered anymore. I had a commitment to myself and to her. We would hold hands and move forward without looking back. Sometimes people ask me how Alice is doing today, if she managed to overcome everything that happened. And the truth is, yes, she did. She's a strong child who went through difficult situations, but with my support, she found her place in the world. It's impressive to see how she's become able to deal with things in a mature way for her age, and it just shows me that despite the pain, we managed to grow together. We both came out of this story stronger. I know that as much as things are better now, the pain and loss will never completely disappear, but looking at Alice, I know I did the right thing. There's nothing more important than her happiness and well-being. The love we have for each other is unshakable, and despite everything we've been through, we were able to create our own family. I don't regret the choice I made, and I don't regret putting Alice first. I've also learned to forgive myself. For so long, I felt wrong to cut off my family, but now I understand that it wasn't my responsibility to carry the entire weight of the world. I couldn't save my family, but I could save my daughter, and that's what I did. And deep down, that's what gives me peace. No matter what others say or think, what matters is what I do for Alice and what we both achieve together. Today, I see that our story is much more than sadness and pain. It's full of overcoming, resilience, and a love that never wavered. We both went through a difficult journey, but in the end we found a safer path full of possibilities. I've learned to be stronger, more determined, and above all, more present. Alice is my motivation, and for her, I would do it all over again. If there's one thing I'd like to say to anyone going through something similar, it's this: never underestimate the power of the love you have for the one you love. When you put the right person first, things start to fall into place. The pain may be great, but the recovery is even greater. Don't be fooled by appearances. Sometimes cutting ties with those who don't respect you is the best path for you and the one you love. That's what I did, and despite the difficulties, I've never been more at peace with myself.